Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to my talk. It's so great to be here at VARC. It's my first time here this year, and I've just been blown away by what an incredible event this has been. So yeah, thank you to the organisers for inviting me to speak today. It's very, very wonderful to be in a room full of vegans at all times, but especially for this talk, because when I've told some of my non-vegan friends and family that I've been giving talks about this industry, I've honestly been met with some of the most confused and blank stares, because I think everyone understands why vegans are against industries like animal agriculture, animal testing, animal entertainment, and so on. They may fight us on this view, but they understand it for the most part. But there's one animal exploitation industry that's been getting away with an unimaginable amount of animal cruelty for so long, going almost completely unchecked, not just with the general public, but with a lot of the vegan movement as well. This industry is a massively underrepresented one in our movement, and I think it's very overdue that it comes to the forefront of it. So today I'm going to be speaking about the pet industry. Is this working? Yes. So it's safe to say that the pet trade is viewed through rose-tinted glasses by many people. Buying an animal has become so normalized by our society that to criticize doing so, you can be seen as not just extreme, but cruel, and even a hater of animals. From the child bringing home their first hamster to the family picking up a puppy from a breeder, buying an animal to own is seen as a wholesome, benevolent act, and those who buy them seen as animal lovers. But we need to rethink the pet industry. This industry deserves to be criticized just like any other that breeds and exploits animals for profit. It is never acceptable to buy an animal to keep as a so-called pet in any circumstance, because animals are sentient beings with their own lives to live who aren't ours to buy. But what's more, many animals exploited by the pet trade are experiencing unimaginable suffering. All these headlines are from the last few years, and they concern animal abuses related to the pet trade in the UK. Exotic pet shop owner on animal cruelty charges. Rising animal cruelty cases in 2024. Breeder slammed as cruel after dumping six-legged dog due to birth defect. The list of pet industry animal abuse scandals goes on and on and on. But what's reported in the mainstream media is just a tiny snapshot of the significant cruelty inherent in an industry that operates on making profit from the buying and selling of sentient beings. Through my work as a journalist specializing in veganism and animal rights, I've conducted a large amount of research on the pet industry over the last couple of years or so. Through this research, I've come to realize that the pet trade is rife with some of the worst examples of animal cruelty that we have in the UK, for reasons I'll outline in the next 30 minutes or so. But before I begin, I would like to clarify a few things about this talk. So the first is my use of the word pet. I would like to make very clear that the word pet is a speciesist term, and my use of it in this talk is only in reference to the official name of the industry. And when referring to animals in human homes, we should use companion animal over pet and guardian over owner. And the second thing I'd like to clarify, and this is very important, is that this speech is about the pet trade and the buying and selling of animals. It is not about the adoption and rescue of companion animals, which should be encouraged as much as possible by those who are able. I definitely do not believe we shouldn't look after animals in our homes. Believe me, I think it's absolutely amazing that people adopt and care for animals. This speech is to raise awareness about the pet industry, which makes a huge amount of money from animal exploitation and breeding and buying and selling as many animals as possible, treating them as disposable objects and commodities, and promoting them being kept in subpar conditions. It does all this while there are thousands upon thousands of animals in shelters who are desperate for a home. I want to raise awareness about the cruelty of the pet industry because I believe that it stayed hidden for far too long. Every time you buy a pet, you are supporting an industry that exploits animals for profit. The global pet industry is worth $320 billion worldwide, and it's been forecast to grow to $500 billion by 2030 because more and more people are buying more and more animals at an alarming rate. So let's have an overview of the UK pet industry as a whole. So I believe that the UK is in the midst of a pet crisis. Millions of animals are being bought and sold to be kept in private homes in this country, and this number is increasing. Currently, there are around 38 million so-called pets in households here, and this number does not include aquatic animals. It's very, very difficult to get an estimate of how many fishes there are, but it's roughly around 100 million, including in tanks and private ponds. More than half, around 57% of UK households keep an animal. So there are also around 3,000 pet shops in the UK. Many of these sell live animals, including snakes, birds, hamsters, rabbits, and many more. As part of my ongoing research into the UK pet industry, I've visited a number of pet shops, mostly in London where I live, and I'll be documenting my experiences in these shops throughout this presentation. So these are the top 10 most popular companion animals in the UK. And I'll be talking about the lives of some of these animals in this presentation so you can get an idea of what happens to them and how they live. So as you can see, dogs, cats, and fishes are by far the most popular companion animal, followed by indoor birds, then domestic fowl, which includes backyard chickens. Rabbits and hamsters are on the list, as well as other so-called exotic animals like snakes and turtles. As you can see, these numbers are absolutely vast. Millions upon millions of animals bred into a system that exploits them for profit. And pet animals, like all animals used for profit, are subjected to serious infringements on their rights. While many of the humans who give their money to this industry, not realizing how cruel it is, do genuinely care about these animals, the pet industry does not. Because where do pet animals come from? How do they come to be in this world? When you see animals in cages in pet shops, did you ever give any thought to where they came from or how they came to be there? Because this truth has been incredibly well shielded from the public. Some animals bought and sold in the UK are still taken from the wild, which is hugely controversial among the general public. But I think some people believe that the difference between wild caught and captive bred pets is a difference between evil and good. We all know that taking animals out of their homes is unethical, but I think some people believe that breeding them in captivity somehow absolves the pet industry of all its wrongs when it comes to trading in animals. But let's see what bred in captivity really means when it comes to the pet trade. Many pet shop animals are bred in breeding farms. These include mice, rabbits, hamsters, and many more. So here are some photographs from a pet breeding farm in the Netherlands. These photographs were taken as part of a PETA investigation. And this particular farm supplied pet shops in Germany, the Czech Republic, and the Netherlands. I've left out some of the more horrific photos, but I thought I'd show you these so you can get an idea of how smaller animals are bred for pet shops. And mills that supply UK pet shops, some UK pet shops, will be very similar to this. Animals kept in horrific conditions that some experts have likened to the facilities used to breed broiler chickens. They'll be kept in overcrowded cages, often with limited or no access to food and water. Cages will often be filthy and with no enrichment. And some animals, like snakes and other reptiles, will be kept in what are essentially Tupperware boxes and bred over and over again until their bodies give up. These mills directly exploit the female reproductive system, using animals as breeding machines over and over again and taking their babies away to be sold. Their babies will then be transported long distances in trucks to pet shops to be put on display for paying customers. Once they arrive at the shop, things don't get any better. According to government guidelines, pet shops in England are considered to be short-term transitional holding facilities for animals, meaning they're allowed to be kept in what the government describes as enclosures of smaller sizes than those intended for long-term care for 3 months in England. 3 months. That's 3 months that animals can be kept in lower standards than even the pitiful standards outlined by welfare guidance. And these lower standards are very, very low. So this essentially means that animals can be kept in boxes at the backs of pet shops for 3 months at a time. So we've seen what happens to animals when they're bred and arrive in the shop, but what about the rest of their lives? I'm now going to share what life is like for some of the animals that we call pets, so you can get an idea of just how cruel this industry can be. I'd like to begin with snakes. And the reason why I'd like to begin with snakes is because I believe they're subjected to some of the most horrifying animal abuse in this country, and hardly anybody knows about it. Snakes in England are the only vertebrate animal who aren't legally required to be able to stretch when held captive. There are around 700,000 snakes kept as pets in the UK, and many of them are forced to spend their entire lives coiled up in tiny glass tanks. I can't even begin to communicate with you how horrific this is. I don't have the words. How would you feel if you were forced to spend your entire life in a cage without being able to stretch your legs? Snakes need to stretch just as much as humans or any other animal, and not being able to is torture for them, as it would be for a dog, as it would be for us. So, at my visit to a particularly nasty independent pet shop in South London, I saw these boxes in full view of everyone at the back of the shop. What do you think is in these boxes? At first, I thought they were full of food or something, but they aren't. They contain sentient beings curled up, unable to stretch their bodies. And this was on display. This wasn't even hidden in the back. This was on the shop floor. Honestly, this is an outrage. If you're struggling to empathize with them because they're snakes, that is speciesism. And at first it is understandable because snakes are very different from us and we're all brought up to have a fear of them. But I cannot impress on you enough how important it is to challenge this ingrained speciesism and fight for reptiles and all other animals who may not be as popular as others, but who are suffering at least just as much and often far more. Ask yourself, how would you feel if these were puppies and kittens in these boxes, unable to stretch? Imagine the outrage, because they are suffering in there just like they would and just like we would. In the wild, snakes travel long distances every day and occupy huge territories. Why are we giving them as edgy pets to the children of this country and keeping them in tiny tanks in their bedrooms only to be left there, forgotten about when the child gets bored? Snakes can live for decades. This means that pet snakes can be kept in a tank without being able to stretch for almost all of that time. I honestly believe that what's happening to snakes is one of the biggest animal scandals in this country, but hardly anybody knows that it's happening. 30 or 40 years curled up in a tank. That is torture to an unimaginable degree. So I visited a major chain pet shop in London, and they had these pamphlets on caring for snakes. The pamphlet seemed to be aimed at children. So I'm about to read a few extracts from a pamphlet on caring for royal pythons, which are one of the most popular pet snake breeds in the UK. So royal python is a species native to West, East, and Central Africa. In the wild, they live in grasslands and huge open forests, yet here they are being sold in a tank in South London. So the pamphlet begins by saying, you want your snake to be happy, and so do we. It then says that royal pythons make for a magnificent and fascinating companion. It goes on to say that they can become rather tame, meaning they're easy to care for. Royal pythons, the pamphlet says, can grow up to 1.5 meters long and live for up to 40 years. And here's one of the most disturbing bits of the pamphlet. In the wild, royal pythons live on the savannas, forest floors, and scrublands of West, East, and Central Africa. To keep them comfy here, you'll need a nice clean vivarium that they can call home. As a guide, this should be at least 2/3 of the length of the snake. This is the pet industry in a nutshell, acknowledging that these animals can live in huge open spaces in the wild, then saying that keeping them in a tank where they can't even stretch will keep them comfy here. I can't even fathom it. Oh yeah, but the pamphlet, sorry, I forgot about the last bit. It gets even more disturbing. So it says, take great care to ensure your vivarium is escape-proof. Royal pythons are relentlessly curious and will soon discover any weak spot. So make sure to check that the doors and any lids are secure. Relentlessly curious. This is an interesting phrase to describe an animal kept in such horrifying conditions that they'll do anything to escape. But as you can see from these headlines, snakes are excellent escape artists. They escape all the time in UK homes, but they aren't escaping because they're curious. They're escaping because they're being tortured. Next up, I would like to speak about fishes. I say fishes rather than fish to emphasize that they are individuals rather than a faceless mass. So around 14% of UK homes keep fishes. This is a huge and terrifying number. Fishes sold by the pet trade are seen as decorative objects rather than the sentient beings that they are. I'm sure many of us here will have grown up believing that goldfishes have 3-second memories. It's what we're all taught as kids, isn't it? But like pretty much everything that we're told about animal exploitation industries as children, this is a lie. There is so much we don't know about fishes, their minds, their feelings, and their abilities. But we do know that they are not unsentient animals, that they are intelligent, that they do not have 3-second memories, and being forced to spend their entire lives swimming endlessly in circles is torture for them. Humans are determined to believe that fishes aren't sentient, but this goes against the huge and growing body of scientific research we have on this subject. Cullen Brown, an expert in fish sentience at Macquarie University in Australia, previously described the belief that goldfishes have 3-second memories as baffling. He said that the belief in short memories is always the same in countries around the world. Sometimes it's 2 seconds, sometimes it's 10, but it's always short. In reality, these animals have memories that potentially span over many, many years. Fishes don't just have good memories. Studies have shown that some are self-aware and can recognize themselves in photos and reflections. Some fishes can remember escape routes out of fishing nets. Some use tools in nature, and some can learn and discover new tools while in captivity. From the limited studies we do have on fishes, it may even be the case that their intelligence matches or exceeds that of animals we know more about, like dogs, pigs, and chimpanzees. Intelligence should never reflect how we treat an animal, as all animals deserve to be free from exploitation, regardless of how clever they are. I just share this about fishes to show just how much we have all been brainwashed by the pet industry. Because this is how the pet industry keeps fishes. And it expects us to believe that this is okay. Fishes who travel huge distances in the ocean, use tools, and problem solve, are forced to spend their lives swimming endlessly in circles. So these videos and this photograph were taken at independent pet shops in London. Let's zoom in on the prices in the middle one. So you can buy a 2 to 3 inch goldfish for £3.50. £3.50 for a life. And these lives also have a multi-buy deal with 6 for £18. 6 sentient beings with incredible mental capacities, comparable to all other animals, including humans, in all ways that matter, being sold 6 for £18. Here are 2 of the tanks being sold by the UK's biggest pet chain. Just look at that 50% off tiny tank that I took a picture of next to an also tiny 40-litre tank, so you can compare and see just how small it is. By selling smaller tanks, this pet store is able to sell fishes to as many people as possible and therefore maximizing its profits. And just look at this. It's also partnered with the likes of SpongeBob SquarePants and Paw Patrol to create tiny child-friendly fish tanks and whatever these monstrosities are. This means that whatever child is given a fish is going to see the animal as a toy rather than a sentient being. And speaking of animals being marketed to children, let's move on to an animal many of us here, myself included, will have kept as kids. There are around 600,000 hamsters kept as pets in the UK. They are popular with children and are seen as ideal pets by parents as they are solitary animals, meaning people believe that it's easy, affordable, and justifiable to buy them as presents for their kids, who then confine them to a cage to be played with until they inevitably get bored. In the wild, hamsters often live in huge fields and are able to burrow, explore, and eat and sleep when they please. They are also nocturnal, and it isn't natural for them to be awake during the day when most kids want to play with them. They do not belong in a cage to be used and abused by humans. I've seen hamsters in desperate situations in pet shops. They are just babies who have found themselves alone in a cage, confused with nothing to do. This photograph was taken at the chain pet store. Hamsters' lives being sold for £11. And just look at what it says under the cages, home sweet home. And this pet store goes on to claim that the happiness and welfare of its animals is the brand's #1 priority, and that its pet village has been designed to have all the space they need. How is that all the space they need, when in the wild these animals spend their days running around fields and burrowing and playing and exploring? Hamsters are often referred to as starter pets for kids. The idea behind this is that these animals are low maintenance enough for children, and that they can teach them about taking on responsibilities and looking after animals. This view is so unbelievably speciesist. Animals do not exist for the convenience and education and amusement of human children. The pet trade sells a range of different sizes of hamster cages, and pretty much all of them are inadequate. Look at some of these I found from independent retailers online. That one on the bottom left looks a bit like a Barbie dream house, but it's an actual cage being marketed to house a sentient being. And look how small that one in the middle is. It's just unfathomable. Why is the pet industry promoting smaller cages? Well, I think we can all agree that a parent is far more likely to buy a present for their child, a hamster for their child, if the cage doesn't take up too much space. Hamsters are so often kept in the corner of a child's bedroom. Kids will often take them out during the day when they should be asleep, but eventually they will get bored of this sentient being they consider a toy and stop taking them out of the cage at all. Cage rage is a common phenomenon in hamsters. This is a mental condition that occurs out of the stress and boredom of being confined to a cage. It leads to behaviors including cage biting, which affects their teeth, and excessive urination. All this suffering to sell new animals, while thousands upon thousands of animals are crying out to be adopted all over the country. But if people were adopting animals, the pet industry wouldn't be making as much money. So it's doing everything it can to convince you to spend your money on new animals. As we all know, the UK loves to pride itself on its so-called animal welfare standards. We'll all have seen adverts humane washing the animal agriculture industry, for example, showcasing cows in fields and saying they're treated humanely by farmers who love them. Obviously, we know that such animal industries are misleading us about how animals are treated, and the pet industry appears to be no different. So look at these two ads side by side. The one on the left is an advert for the egg industry that says chickens are cuddled by farmers. The one on the right is an advert for a chain pet store on a London bus, stating we're all for pets, again with someone cuddling an animal. The way that the animal agriculture industry and pet industries are marketing themselves is eerily similar. But if the pet trade cared about animals, it would stop selling animals and focus instead on encouraging adoption and providing for the animals already here. Instead, it's encouraging the public to think of animals as disposable products. The pet trade makes money by selling as many animals as possible. It does not care one bit about these animals. Just like animals used for food, pet animals are torn from their mothers, kept in torturous conditions, and denied proper and appropriate care. You don't need to sneak onto a farm to see blatant animal abuse in this country. Just walk into any pet shop and you will find terrified animals crammed together in cages, living a life of misery. Their suffering is in plain sight. It's right in front of our eyes, but so many of us just don't see it. Ingrained speciesism in people across the country is stopping people from seeing the pet industry for what it is. Because everyone united to criticize puppies and kittens being sold in pet stores a few years back before it was outlawed in 2020. Why isn't it doing the same for other animals? Look at this image. How does it make you feel? It's of a puppy being sold in a North London pet store before Lucy's Law came into effect in 2020. This photograph was published as part of an investigation by the Mirror, which caused outrage among the general public and was published as an expose. This picture was taken by me in a North London pet store the other day. This is what's happening in pet stores all over the country, and no one is batting an eyelid. Why is it unethical to keep puppies in this condition, but not gerbils, rats, hamsters, snakes, and all the other animals we keep as pets? Are they really so different? Animals are not ours to buy. The pet trade is focused on profit, and it will happily oversee animals being bred in cruel conditions and promote animals being kept in cruel conditions to make as much money as possible. In a way, the pet industry is becoming increasingly intensive in a similar way to how animal agriculture is, with more animals, small cages, and massively cruel conditions. But animal abuse in the pet trade is somewhat unique in that many pet animals will live for a very long time, meaning some of them suffer in torturous conditions for decades on end. So what can we as vegans do to help pet animals? Firstly, and most importantly, never buy them. If you are truly ready and prepared to welcome a companion animal into your home, adopt them, and always tell your friends and family why adopting, not shopping, is important. You should also take some time to learn as much as you can about the pet industry so you can speak about it in your outreach and activism. Often vegan activism focuses on animals used for food, sometimes fashion, entertainment, experimentation as well, but we all need to speak about pet animals far more. Thirdly, please boycott all pet shops that sell live animals. Don't buy anything from them, including food, toys, and accessories. And just very quickly, if you'd like to learn more about the pet industry, please follow these two Instagram accounts, Rescue.Retail and the Pet Shop Campaign. Just give Illy and Shakira a shout out. They both share pet trade related information and action that you can get involved with. But yeah, that's all done. Sorry. Thank you very much, everyone. Sorry if I went over.
Thank you. Thank you, Polly. That was very informative, very interesting. Thank you. I have a few questions. If you guys have questions, please put on the app, but I'll also see if we have a couple of minutes. First one, do you have statistics on the household that have pets also included? Yeah, do your statistics on households that have pets also include rescue or just breeder bought? That's just general. Okay. What comment would you make about the fact of pet shop and breeders licensing in the UK? Yeah, what comments would you make about that?
Yeah, lots needs to be done, basically. Yeah, I mean, there's so many issues. There's so many issues with pet shops, and it's very, very, very difficult. Sorry. There's so many issues with pet shops, and it's incredibly hard to, when you put in a complaint, get anything done. It's just there's such a lack of charge for people to kind of act when it comes to the pet industry, because it's so hidden. I think that there's no motivation for people really, so it's really, really hard. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Do you have any data on how much the pet industry makes from selling animal compared to how much it takes from selling cages, tanks, accessories, and food?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it actually doesn't make a huge amount of profit from selling the animals themselves, which is why I think Rescue.Retail currently has basically calling on Pets at Home to stop selling animals, and Pets at Home's main competitor, which is named Jolly's, has actually stopped selling animals, and that's partly because of people don't like it anymore, and it's really, really quickly falling out of favor. So the pet industry, I don't think it has a particularly financial vested interest, but obviously people come in and they buy the animals and then they buy the cages as well. So they are making more money from the cages, but then they do have an interest in getting people in and impulse buying the animals. So yeah, it's a really, really tricky one.
Any more questions? No? There's a quick question. Okay, there are two more. One is, you're clearly very passionate about this subject. Would you consider becoming a campaigner?
I'm very happy with my job at the moment, so no, but I do like campaigning outside of work, and so yeah, I'm doing a lot of stuff with it outside of work, yes.
Last one, interesting one. Has there been a backlash from vegans who own pets?
Vegans who own pets. So this is a really good question, because I started speaking about this industry about a year ago, and I was a little bit worried because it's such an emotive subject, and I thought that people might get upset. And I know that like lots of vegans have bought animals, and like what I'm trying to kind of convey is that like it's not a bad thing if you have bought an animal in the past. Please don't feel guilty if you have. It's just about understanding this industry and learning for the future, because so many people just have no idea about this industry, and they have no idea that it's unethical to buy these animals. So like if you have bought an animal, please don't think this is like attacking you or anything like that. Just kind of learn about it and think for next time. I haven't had any backlash at all. People have been lovely. People have been very receptive, and they have also agreed that this is a very underrepresented topic in the movement. So yeah, I'm glad that people are talking about it more. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Thank you very much, Polly. Everyone, round of applause.